Sorry, I was in a different Zoom meeting.
Oh, so are we ready, Patty?
It is at 6:01, and it does look like we have everyone here. Let me share my screen. Do you see the agenda, or do you see my email?
The agenda.
Agenda. That's good.
So we're ready to roll?
We are.
All right.
Ready to go.
All right. We will call the February 2nd meeting of the Scott County Parks Advisory Commission to order at whatever it was, 6:02. Roll call. Kristen French.
Here.
Lori Schmid. Am I pronouncing it right, Lori?
You are correct, but I need to make another correction on my name. It's Lauri, no E. So we changed it from Laura to Lori, but I'm here.
All right.
So sorry.
Thank you. Carrie Cooper.
I'm here, but it's actually Coop.
Coop. All right. Scratch the E, scratch the R. All right. Well, welcome to both of you. Commissioner Spieler.
Yep, I'm here.
Commissioner Gerlach.
Here.
I'm present. Commissioner Stieg.
Here.
And Commissioner Ulrich.
Here.
All right. Moving on to Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have a, thank you. All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it
stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
All right. Moving on to item 3, agenda. Anything to add to the agenda, Patty?
Yes, there was something. So not only did I miss the spelling of 2 of our 2 brand new commissioners, trying to remember what it was we wanted to add. I'm having a pretty good week, you guys. So Alyssa Delgado misspelled was, remind me what it was?
Yeah, we just wanted to add an informational item, Chair, just an update from staff about a volunteer event happening.
And where are we adding it?
Under the informational items.
So under 9, if you could add a 3rd one under projects.
Gotcha. All right. All right, so we will add an item 9A number 3. All right, anything else that we need to add?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Then if someone would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved, French.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, I missed this. Who made the second?
Gerlach.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. In the packet that was sent out are the minutes from the January 5th meeting. Assuming everyone's had a chance to look at them, are there any additions, corrections to the minutes? How about the spelling of our newest members' names?
Those are correct.
Oh, all right.
Mr. Chair, my name, Kristen French, is spelled incorrectly several times, and then it's spelled correctly other times. So I don't know if you want me to work directly.
Yes.
With Dami, or, I don't know who I should, get that to, but the correct spelling is IN, and it's, for example, in attendance and roll call, it's correct, but then in approval of the agenda, it's incorrect. Approval of minutes, it's incorrect.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner French, Dami can make all of those changes. No need to go through all those things.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Do we need a motion though to, at least in general, denote the fact that we're going to correct Commissioner French's spelling throughout the minutes? Sure. Would someone like to make, are there any other corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none. If someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the correction of Commissioner French's name spelling, that would be wonderful.
I'll make that. I'll move that we that we accept the January 5th meeting minutes with corrections, particularly to Kristen French's name. No other changes.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Gerlach. Is there a second?
Schmidt, seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the correction of Commissioner French's name spelling. Any discussion? Any discussion? Sensing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, recognition of interested citizens. I suppose, I could just look at the screen in front of me instead of my hard copy. Item 5, recognition of interested citizens. I didn't take note that there was anybody on the call. Did you, Patty?
No, we did not get any requests from citizens to partake or to give their comments.
Okay. Moving on to item 6, operation, maintenance, and natural resources.
All right, for this item, we have a guest, Andy Vig from the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community is here. Andy, is Farron joining you tonight?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, Farron's here as well. Andy and Farron are going to chat with us about the natural and cultural significance of wild rice. Alyssa, do you want to say just one or two comments about the work that you've done with Farron recently related to the wild rice, and then they can jump into their presentation?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm really excited to have both Andy and Farron here. In previous PAC meetings, we had mentioned that we were sharing some examples of special use permits that we had approved throughout the year, and the wild rice harvesting was one of them, and there was a lot of interest within the PAC members to hear more about this effort. So I reached out to Farron, and she was, she was gratefully willing to help bring Andy along, and I hope that especially for the new commissioners too, you can learn a little bit about this this opportunity that we have kind of been jumping on and that we hope to continue moving forward. And with that, if Andy or Farron, you guys want to share your information, you are welcome to.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. I'll start. My name is Farron Davis Anderson. I am the supervisor of environmental services for the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. And like Alyssa said, we reached out to Scott County and Three Rivers Park District this past fall. It happened very organically. It was kind of by chance that I was driving by Spring Lake Park just to the south there, and you can see on that map, I looked over and I saw a field of wild rice. So I was very excited. That's not something you typically see around, Scott County a whole lot. So I was jazzed about it. And when you think of wild rice, you're often thinking of places in northern Minnesota, but you know, historically wild rice was pretty prevalent around here and around Scott County. And so when we get to see areas that still have it, it's pretty special. And so within our community, the Shakopee, Metawakan, Sioux community, we're just trying to get that relative back. And that's kind of how we view a lot of, you know, plants, animals, that's our relative, and we're just trying to bring it back in a good way. And so it's really exciting to see that there's, you know, a source potentially for us to harvest from and restore this relative on SMSC lands. And, you know, we've got a couple different projects that we've been working on that have shown success. You know, if you know anything about wild rice, it's a annual plant, which basically means it needs to seed every year to come back. So it has a lot of boom and bust years. And this year was a boom year. And I think a lot of that had to do with, you know, one, it was really dry. And we saw even within our spots that we have wild rice that it was like it just took off this year. So we think a lot of that has to do with the water levels. And Andy can talk a little bit more about what the community is doing and you know, how we're trying to bring more awareness about wild rice within the community, so that there's opportunities for harvesting, to learn, you know, different ways. Traditionally, it would have been harvested, you know, within a canoe and with different sticks. And he'll talk more about that later. But for us in the land department, we're just really trying to restore it into a couple different areas. And so, like I said, it's really nice to have a local partner that allows us, you know, access to these areas. And so you can, if you go to the next picture on the slide, you can see like there's that wetland, that area. I don't know if you know how wild rice looks, but pretty much everything in that picture to the top where the pointer is, that's all rice. So when I drove past that, I was like, wow, that's a lot of rice. You can go to the next, go down a little bit. And it was really tall. You know, normally you're used to rice in a canoe. So when there's not a lot of water available to get in a, you know, in a canoe, it can be really robust. And so it's interesting because in the south part of the state, a lot of the rice is, I've talked to elders about this, and they've said that the rice is a little bit more robust than you see in northern Minnesota. So it could be just a different subspecies, which is really interesting too. But here, it's almost like a bamboo stand. It was, that's me. I'm 6 foot tall. So that rice it was really cool to just be in there and see like how tall the rice was. You go down one more. So typically, you know, we'd be collecting it within a canoe with the knockers. But again, last year, I should say, it was so dry that we couldn't, you know, access these areas with canoe. And so normally the water levels probably in this wetland would be at least a foot or two higher. So we were able to access by foot though. But you know, when wild rice is ready to harvest, you really got to capitalize on it. So that's like a learning lesson for us, I guess, is that, you know, once you see it and then you notice it's there, maybe we should work a little bit more closely and try to get that permit a little bit quicker, because when it's ready, man, it's just ready to go. Because one week we're like, oh yeah, it'd be perfect to get in here and harvest it. And the next week it was pretty much, a lot of it had already seeded. So that's nice too. That's going to be all available to next year. But we weren't able to collect a whole lot of it because we kind of missed the window a little bit. So we were able to get about a pound of rice, and we reseeded that into a nearby wetland restoration just to the north of Spring Lake Park. And so we just basically hand seeded that into the other wetland. And you can continue along. And so I want to pass it over to Andy. He's been so great to work with our department. I've learned so much from him, and I'm so appreciative of him and his staff and working collectively on our projects, because for me, it's really important to, like I said, view our plants, animals, and other living things as relatives. And so it's really important for me to understand, you know, the cultural significance of all these plants and animals, and then incorporate that into the work that we're doing at Shakopee too. So that's something that, you know, we're just continuing to do more and more of, and integrating, you know, traditional knowledge with our or indigenous science with Western science. And Andy's just been a great resource for that, and I appreciate him so much. So Andy, do you want to speak a little bit about the cultural significance of Piston or wild rice?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Farron. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Andy Vig. Mitakepi, my relatives, it's good to see all of you. Yeah, Farron asked if I wanted to sit in on a meeting about wild rice, and then next thing you know, I'm presenting. So, but no, this is really good. You know, like Farron said, in this area, you know, wild rice was at one time, I think, pretty dense. And I wanted to share this calendar here. This is something we've worked on for the last few years, but in our Dakota way, we really, a lot of our harvesting and the things we do, we go off of these lunar cycles. And so each moon has a name, and these names can vary from year to year. But what's interesting, you know, we haven't really harvested much, maybe in the last 100 years in this area, but these names have been handed down. And so they're still here. And we know that this was a big part of our food source and our daily lives. So this one here is Si Hinaketui. And I know it's kind of small there, but it's the wild rice storing moon. And the word for rice, wild rice, is Si. And we just wanted to show this just to make you aware that, you know, during this time, and Farron mentioned it, you know, that there is a small window, but at the same time, from what we understand, our Dakota ancestors spent a lot of time harvesting and preparing this. So if you could go to the next slide, this is Wajupiwi, so the final harvest moon. So we think that, you know, this wild rice, preparing this and harvesting continued into even what is known as October. Yeah, you guys can, maybe we can send you some of these calendars, but yeah, they're just it's a reminder of the things that, you know, what we should be doing out in our environment. And really this wild rice was especially important preparing for the long winter months. So you can go to the next slide. I don't know if any of you have been to our culture center and public exhibit, but these photos are from the exhibit. In the center there, this is one of the dugout canoes that we have on display. It was found in Minnetonka, I think in the 1930s. We got it carbon dated, and it was roughly 200 years old. But this is really showing that fall time, you know, our people harvesting in the River Valley area. And you can see even some paintings. I think Seth Eastman did a lot of drawings and paintings of our people harvesting. On the right one there, you can kind of see one of the push-pulls. And I don't know, yeah, in the front there, the lady's using some wooden knockers to knock the rice into the canoe. So yeah, just a nice visual. And we actually have some wild rice there behind the canoe as well. But you can go to the next slide. And this was just taken from one of Samuel Pond's books. He documented our Dakota people in this area. This was you know, done in the 1830s, 1840s. But I just thought it'd be important to share that he did recognize that Dakota people did, gather considerable quantities of wild rice. So the next slide. And this is a map here from Paul Duran. If you look in the towards the top behind the teepees, there's a lake there. It's called Seam Bidet, and that translates to Rice Lake. And I believe that's a lake down in the river valley there in Shakopee. And so I just wanted to show, that these names, they've kind of lasted. Not all lakes would have names. We would a lot of times describe the geographical features around bodies of water. We didn't necessarily call each lake a specific name, but yeah, we just know that there was a lot of rice down here, and oftentimes I think the villages would be in these areas, not only with the natural springs, but the food source. Yeah, all right, you can go to the next one. Yeah, and so we had an awesome experience this fall. For the first time in our area, we were able to go out and harvest on a smaller body of water next to the reservation, and harvest wild rice. So it was really kind of a reconnecting to our old food source. That's some of the finished rice there on the right. It was a little bit smaller and kind of more black in color. We didn't get a whole lot, but we were just excited to get some. And we were behind on our schedule too. By the time we found out about it, we tried to let our tribal members know about it. But what we were worried is that people would over harvest it and not give it a chance to come back. So it was just a few of us that went out, but yeah, and that was us preparing it over the fire too. So it's kind of a cool process if you ever get a chance to do it. It's a fun process, but very time consuming, from harvesting it on the lake to getting it into that bowl. That took a lot of work. So I got a new appreciation for when I'm eating wild rice, that's for sure. All right, you could go to the next one. Yeah, and then we got notified, I think, by just a resident of Minnetonka area. I think he has an acquaintance with our tribe, but they noticed a significant wild rice growing on certain parts of the lake, Minnetonka. I don't know if anybody harvested any up there, but again, I think they also might have had a stronger presence there because of the water levels were low. But really, yeah, that's, I think all I had. Is there any more? No, that's all the slides. But oh yeah, this was a report, a story we did within our community here, just on wild rice, and I won't read through it all, but there is yeah, right there. So we have a large collections here at our cultural center, a lot of artifacts, and these are two of the wooden knockers that would be used for harvesting the rice. So we have those in our collection. There's another one there. And then, yeah, if you go down towards the bottom, there's an example of a basket, a birch bark winnowing basket. And so that would be after you put it over the fire. You would put it in this basket, and then you kind of toss it in the air, and within the air it'll remove the outer husk with the wind. So yeah, we just thought it'd be nice to share some of those things. But really, yeah, I think we're just excited to try to get back to harvesting in this area, trying to promote it any way we can, protect it. But yeah, I just thought I'd share those, those details, and just thank you for letting me share today.
Thank you, both Andy and Farron for the presentation. Does anyone have any questions for either of them?
Mr. Chair, I do, Kristen.
Sure.
I noticed, you commented that you got about a pound from that field that we see in that picture. If all things had gone right, what amount of pounds would you potentially be able to get from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to say really. But we were aiming to get 50 pounds. And
Okay.
I think we could have easily gotten 50 pounds. It was just that like I said, we just missed the window. And I think that it's hard to estimate how many pounds are out there, but that pretty much that entire wetland, as far as I could see, was kind of chock full of wild rice. And that would be something, in the future that would be really interesting to investigate a little bit more because, within our community at SMSC, one way that we use to estimate wild rice is with a drone. And that's really a newer technology and it's a little bit less labor intensive. And so it gives you a good estimate of the acreage that wild rice is occupying. And we're trying to correlate that with some data that we have from density estimates that we've taken in the canoe. And that's just something that we've been working on, but it would be really interesting to fly that wetland and just see like the acreage that it occupies. Maybe in the future, that's something we can do.
Yeah. Other questions?
I have another question.
Oh, sure.
Since I understood that this area was perhaps just noticed this fall, is it something that could that have begun just recently or was it just noticed?
I'd say that it's based on the amount of rice that was there. It's probably been there, but it's like I said, wild rice kind of has boom and bust years. So it could have just been that it was just harder to detect. But I bet it's been there for, years.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of comments, if I may.
Sure.
Let's see. When we did our park master plan, the ecologists that we hired documented the wild rice there. So we were aware of it. And I also wanted to let Andy and Farron know that we have wild rice at Doyle Kennefic as well. So that's a site in the growing season where we'd be more than happy to show you where it is. And then also we may be able to be proactive about those permits. So if this is something that you're actively restoring areas and we want to give you the flexibility to be a little more nimble, right, when it's ready, that's something I think we could proactively do. Thank you.
This is Lori Schmidt. One
ahead.
of the things I noticed in the paperwork that Andy, you had gone through was talking about the timing of when you need to get into it. So is it September or is it earlier that you would need to have access to the wetland areas to be able to locate the wild rice and start planning your harvest?
Yeah, I think you'd have to, be out there monitoring it, almost daily to see, how it's, growing and if it's ready. But those are just, I should mention that oftentimes those names, you would name them after. So it'd be what you experienced that moon. So those dates are just kind of rough estimates. So.
Thank you.
Gerlach, I have a couple of questions. One, I'm kind of wondering that maybe either one of you could answer this. Are the dates different up north? I mean, is that something you have to be aware of? Do they start earlier when they're racing up north? That's my one question. And the second one was kind of what's the plan going forward? as far as cooperating and trying to reseed. We'll be kind of repeating the same effort every year. And I think my question on licensing got answered by Patty. So I'm just kind of curious about the north versus the south as far as harvest dates.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, typically, yeah, they would be harvesting earlier than down in the south. So the north would be a little, maybe a couple weeks prior. But yeah, what were you going to say, Farron?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. There'd be a little bit of a difference just based on, you know, weather patterns and things, you know, green up a little bit faster down here. And as far as like what our plan is to go in the future, like Patty was saying, it'd be really, you know, great if we could be proactive about, you know, the permits. And so then we had a little bit of flexibility to go out, because it can vary year to year depending on the weather. And so, like Andy said, like things aren't set in stone. Like if it doesn't necessarily mean like the rice will be ready in September. It could be ready a little bit earlier. It could be ready a little bit later. But having that flexibility would be, you know, key and awesome. And then as far as the amount that we would like to harvest, I think that, you know, setting a goal of, you know, 50 pounds a year and seeing how much that, you know, provides for us, that would be, you know, a good starting point. And then maybe just keeping in mind like what the sustainability of that wetland is, and, you know, trying to walk that line and be conscious of that too, because, you know, we don't want to over harvest. But harvesting in general is a good practice because it helps reseed seeds. So it's good.
Excellent. And then I had one more question. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, I hope we can be involved together in the future with, you know, moving forward with it and reseeding and trying to expand areas, you know, the park with the Mid-Wacaton. But I was kind of curious when you pointed out that lake and ponds book. Was that the current Rice Lake? Do you think it was the ones right down on the river, or was it Dean Lake? It's kind of hard to see. Do you know which actual lake it was in today's map?
Yeah, it's the Rice Lake down in Shakopee, okay, down by the river. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the current Rice Lake.
Yep.
Okay, I guess that's it. I think one other thing, I know years ago when I was in ag school down at St. Paul, they had a whole wild rice research program. I'm guessing that was to try to domesticate and that type of thing, but I didn't know if you had any involvement at all with that program, or I know they used to do some research off the Arboretum up there on Highway 5. I'm just kind of curious if they've had any involvement, or you with them, whatever.
No, we don't have any involvement with that project for you know, domestication of wild rice, but there is a project currently going on at the University of Minnesota that involves a lot of the northern Ojibwe tribes, and then we're bringing in the Dakota tribes too. And it's really a tribally led initiative to you know, understand, do some research about what's affecting wild rice, which contaminants really affect wild rice, and they're finding some really cool social and basically chemical research that's that they've been at the forefront of. And socially, they did a study too about they asked harvesters that, you know, apply for permits every year, like what's the social value of wild rice, and they were part of that. So I can send you the website with more information, but that's more of a tribally led initiative, and then the University of Minnesota is kind of a partner.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was curious about.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, can I make another comment for
Sure.
Andy and Farron? I don't expect you to stay on the call by any means, but I just wanted to mention that later in the meeting, we are going to be talking about kicking off an improvement project across the street from that wetland. So the lakefront area of Spring Lake Regional Park, we're going to be bringing some like fishing pier and trails and a parking area for people to really kind of get up close to the Spring Lake. And I was just thinking that I don't know that we can do it as a part of the first phase of construction, but it might be a really interesting site that we could do some education around wild rice. Just was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I'll be reaching out to probably Steve Albrecht of the community to see if you folks are interested in hearing more about that project. So you don't have to stay on the meeting to hear about it.
That sounds great. Thanks, Patty.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. Again, thank you, Farron and Andy, for the presentation and for joining us this evening. And as Patty said, you are welcome to stay on, or you can, get off the call and go on about your night. So either way, thank you again very much. And we will move on to item 7. Outreach Visitor Services, Recreation and Education Programs.
That's a mouthful.
Yes.
So that would be me. I just wanted to mention that we have hired a replacement former recreation specialist we all loved, but he went on to greater and bigger things. That would have been Tyler Thompson. We have someone taking his position named Brent Hennen, and I have not asked if there's any relation to the infamous Jerry Hennen. But Brent is, I'll be inviting him to come to one of our future meetings. I wanted to mention that last fall, he partook in our Spring Lake Trailgate event. And I've taken him on a tour actually last summer of Doyle Kennebec Regional Park. He is incredibly enthusiastic about all of the parks in this community. And his specialty areas are archery and some of the more like sports oriented thing like hunting and fishing. So he'll be involved in those programs. And he also is really big on networking. And so he'll be doing some of the coordination with other different sort of recreation specialists throughout the park district, similar to what Tyler did. So I just wanted to mention that. And then I will hand it off to Alyssa for the next item.
Yes, thank you, Patty. Hello again, Chair and Commissioners. At the previous meeting, I did mention how we did have an update to one of our equity grants. And I indicated that we did bring someone on board to be our Parks Wellness Programmer. And I just wanted to take the opportunity tonight to welcome Annie Bunio, who we have hired. She's been really great at kind of diving in head first on trying to learn both agencies and then also gearing up to be preparing and coordinating wellness programs in the county. So I wanted her to have the opportunity to meet the Parks Commission and also speak a little bit about herself, and for all of us to just give her a great welcome to being part of our park staff and working on this initiative.
Alyssa, and thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having me tonight and for the welcome. I've been here for, I think, a little over 3 weeks now, so still definitely learning everyone and making those connections, but I'm very excited about this role. Just a little bit about me. I'm currently seeking my master's degree in social work, and I've also had experience working with a lot of different communities in the outdoors, guiding and doing other work, and it's just so exciting for me to combine my passion for both mental health and wellness and then for the outdoors in this position. So I really look forward to working with our community partners to kind of broaden that welcome and create programming that connects more people to the wonderful healing power of the outdoors. So.
Yeah, thanks, Annie, for sharing a little bit more about yourself. And if any of the commissioners have questions for Annie, they're welcome to answer them. But I wanted to indicate that coming soon, we will probably be doing more updates about the mental health and wellness grant and kind of the next steps and progress we're making. But if anyone has questions they want to ask Annie, they're welcome to do so.
Anyone have any questions? Hearing none. So first of all, just want to say welcome to the team, Annie. It is an interesting group of people that you get to deal with. So welcome to the group. We will try not to be too hard on you, at least for the next week or so, at least. So again, welcome to the group. Unless there's anything else, I think we're moving on to item 8. Is that correct? Okay. And item 8 is administration. We can see the agenda, yes. Okay. Administration Planning and Development, item 8A, review 2022 PAC calendar.
I was so prepared with all my other stuff, and then I didn't do a separate tab for this. Here we go. So Dami made this sort of easy to see, this wonderful calendar where we can easily see where our monthly meetings fall. So as you know, the first Wednesday of every month. And we don't need to make any decisions about adjusting the calendar tonight, but I did want folks to, I think last month we said at least look at your calendars, give it some thought. Let me know if you have any summer plans that we should be thinking about in terms of adjusting dates. Sometimes when our July date falls too close to Independence Day, we move that. We've moved the August 3rd date. You guys have been gracious there, but I have a standing sort of family reunion thing. So with that, I'll just have people look at the calendar and let me know if you know of a conflict, and we can decide whether or not we should move the meeting. Typically, we've approached it as if, you know, a person's gone, not a big deal. But if we're looking at a situation where we're going to it's going to be hard to make quorum, or if we have a really important topic that we know will be scheduled and we want to make sure we have as many people as possible, we've taken those things into consideration.
Mr. Chair, I have, I know that the June 1st is likely I will be unavailable. Again, I don't need the whole thing changed unless we anticipated as we got closer that it would be an issue for a quorum, but I expect that I will not be available for the June 1st meeting.
You? At this moment, I think it's probably still too early to figure out what we want to do in July. And typically in, what is it, August, September, we like hold one meeting typically later and call it both months. But I assume we'll deal with that as we get closer to what should be much warmer days.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, we've often, I think, combined, like we've moved June to later in the month and skipped July. We don't have to do that. I think there were a few years where there were reasons to do that. I mean, but we certainly are open to that if folks want to lessen the meeting load during those months. The part of the problem with doing that is we do have a few important projects coming up here, and it would be a shame, to miss an update or feedback from the Park Commission if we were taking a meeting off the calendar.
So unless there is some specific item, I would assume that individuals can get back to you, Patty, over the next few weeks in regards to their availability for meetings. And then in the coming months, we can look at what we want to do with the summer. Sound reasonable?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just wondering now how many more meetings are we assuming are going to be Zoom before we go to hopefully outside? Do we have any? Is it going to be Zoom for sure, like the next couple months?
Certainly March, and depending on weather, I mean, if it warms up early, there's a potential maybe for April, but I would probably guess it will be May before we can get back together outside. Does that sound about right, Patty?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's what I was thinking. The only other sort of caveat, and maybe I'm too much of an optimist here, but I was thinking, you know, in April, if the government center construction is done, and if there's a big change in terms of how we deal with COVID, you know, you never know. Should we just keep it open that maybe we're meeting in person in April at the government center, and just choose to be optimistic?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And another reason I asked, March, I'm going to be gone in this March, but I might be able to just tune in the Zoom meeting from wherever I'm at, which will be a trailer park somewhere down south where it's warm. So kind of curious.
Guarantee you. Yeah, I guarantee you we won't be meeting in March. I would not bet my life savings, but I'd bet your life savings that we're, you know, going to be on Zoom in March. So feel free to join us from a sunny, warm Florida. Other questions or discussion? Sure,
Mr. Chair, this is Lori Schmid. As an attorney, of course, I always have to look at the laws. The ability for us to meet by Zoom is limited to 3 times in a calendar year, unless we hit a couple of requirements. And I can send you, and I was going to do this as a side to send to both you and to Patty to discuss, but since the state of emergency has been removed, I don't know if we can continue to do these unless we get some kind of clarification from, I'm not even sure who we'd have to get it from, but I would like to have that discussion later if you would like.
Sure. So I would tend to assume that what you are telling us would also apply to the County Board of Commissioners. So Commissioner Ulrich, are you aware or has there been any discussion about what Commissioner Schmidt is talking about?
Yeah, our county attorney is definitely advising us on this, and we are able to go fully remote, fully Zoom. Our meetings have been hybrid pretty much through this whole crisis. We were hybrid Tuesday, so there must be some something under which we're operating that allows us to do it. I mean, we'd have to, because our county attorney has researched it. It's the first thing on our minutes or on our agenda, each agenda. Before it even lists the agenda, it explains why we're able to meet. Actually, in terms of the pandemic, we had our largest count of cases a week ago, through the highest of all, you know, cases was like 2,200. This last week, it was, that was 2 weeks ago, I think. And this last one I saw today was 2,000 cases in Scott County in a week. So I think it's more that we're tired of this than we're out of the pandemic. I mean, we're still very much in a pandemic.
Okay.
Patty, so we can get the county attorney to specify more clearly. I can't quote you. I'm not an attorney, but I know we've gotten, our chair is in Florida, leading the meetings from Florida. So, and I attended the meeting from Grand Rapids this week. So,
okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Ulrich. If we could, Patty, do we want to just follow up with and get something from the county attorney to help alleviate Commissioner Schmid's concerns?
Or we just need to state something maybe possibly in our minutes that say that we're conducting this kind of like what Commissioner Ulrich said that they do on theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Schmid, I would ask, ask the county attorney what that language is, and whether it, in the case of an advisory commission too, it might be different than what the county board needs to do. So yeah, thank you for bringing it up. I think it's good as a kind of refresher and reminder each other of that for sure.
So you'll take the to-do, Patty, to follow up?
Yes, I'll take the to-do.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. And thank you, Commissioner Schmid, for bringing it to our attention.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on to, I believe we're moving on to item B, wayfinding project update.
Nathan Moe is going to cover this item. Nathan, would you like me to move on to your images?
If you don't mind, I'd be happy to share my screen.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that. I've been using Teams forever, so now that I'm in Zoom, I'm lost. Give me a second. This is what I'm missing, I think. I can't seem to share my screen. I'm just sharing applications here.
Take your time, Nathan. If it doesn't work in the next little bit here, I can share mine, like I said.
Yeah.
So you should on the,
go ahead.
Yeah, on the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a bar that pops up and out occasionally. There should be a big green share screen button.
Yeah, I'm in that menu and I'm just seeing a list of my open programs, and I'm wanting to share a screen because I have a web document and a PDF that I'd like to show you. But as long as most are aware of the location of the Big Woods Regional Trail, I think we should be okay. Are you seeing some Big Woods Regional Trail kiosks and other signage?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to move this here so it looks like I'm speaking into the camera. I wanted to share a little bit of an update on our kiosk project that's been continuing here for several years now, but essentially a lot of our initial intent has been installed. So on screen here you see, and in your packets, you see several of the elements that have been installed, including the two kind of our marquee kiosks that we'll be installing along our regional trails. We developed this standard for all of our regional trails, and this is kind of our beta project. These two rather wide kind of information-rich kiosks are in the ground in downtown Shakopee, assisting trail users with that incredibly complex section of regional trail that goes under County Road 69 and then connects back up with the Home Street Bridge. So recognizing that this is probably one of the most complex sections of regional trail, there is quite a bit of signage throughout our system, and it's kind of focused in this area. Throughout the regional trail, there are small signs that say Big Woods Regional Trail, and then where there are opportunities to turn on the trail, we have arrows. Home Street is also kind of a unique situation because it is on road, and so we've added the Big Woods Regional Trail signs to the existing bike boulevard signs. Bikes may use the full lane is something that we worked with the city to include on the road so that bikes understand that they can use the entire lane. And then to support that, these are called sharrows, and those were installed this last summer. And then lastly, we do have the one area on the regional trail where there is a small gap. And in those, at the ends of those locations, we've got a sign that references that the regional trail ends at this location for now, but that we are continuing to work on finding solutions to make that connection, likely when the Marshall Road section is reconstructed. So I just wanted to share those successes and the kind of orient some of the new commission members about what we've been working on. We also have been taking a look at what is available to continue some of the messaging when we did this project early on. We know that there was a few other areas that we could potentially incorporate some additional assistance with our trail users. And I'm not sure if this doesn't change what you're seeing, does it? Are you seeing a map of Downtown Shakopee? Okay. Nope. Maybe I'll just do this quickly. So this is Downtown Shakopee here that I hope you're seeing.
Yes.
And we have been looking at one additional location on the south end of the Home Street Bridge. So we've solved a lot for folks that are coming from Shakopee down through the system. We've solved things for those that are coming on the state trail. But we also recognize that we have a wonderful connection here on our regional trail that crosses the 101 bridge, and we ran out of aerial here, but the trail actually continues and connects with the larger system in Hennepin and Carver counties. So we may get quite a few trail users that are coming this direction and getting to the south end of the bridge and may not have a great understanding of where to go. So instead of one of these large kind of premier kiosks, we are looking at something smaller. Instead of an 8-foot wide kiosk, it would be a 2-foot wide kiosk. And in your packet, we have shared a very early concept that would kind of is our vision of what this kiosk might include. So for those park users or for those trail users that are coming from Carver or Hennepin County, they would come across the kiosk in that location that I was pointing to, kind of, or I don't know if you can see where the kiosk, where I'm pointing to now. It would provide them some context for the entire regional trail in this map on the bottom. And then on the image, which is kind of an oblique view of the rest of the regional trail as it continues to the south, shows the path that users would take, as well as something that I think Commissioner Spieler has touched on several times, helping to share with users a quick look at distances to some of the kind of more marquee locations along the regional trail. So in this case, it looks like there is a typo. Like I said, this is very much a draft. One of these two Huber Park ones would reference the state trail that it's connecting with down below. And then I think we have some font things that we can work on to help it really pop and make sure that users are able to see what types of connections they can make through the regional trail. So this would be a 2-sided kiosk. I'm looking at the second, there we go. So this is what we would envision it looking like from those users that are coming up from the lower portion of the trail onto the bridge. And then connecting with ultimately, hopefully, the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail and continuing on the regional trail system. But of course, any other marquee locations that are along the trail are also important. And then a last component that we were looking at is, so on the kiosk that is down next to the parking lot on Levy Drive. Unfortunately, this summer, there was already a moment where somebody had used that blank canvas on the backside to make their mark with spray paint. It was quickly cleaned up and the kiosk is fine, but we had some concern that this might be a frequent occurrence, partly because it's a big blue canvas, essentially. It's an empty space that is maybe asking to be filled. So our attempt at curbing that to a degree is to design a little bit of a welcoming message that helps users who are driving into that parking lot understand what they're connecting with here. So this is that concept, just identifying that this is a trailhead. It's for use of the Big Woods Regional Trail, the Minnesota Valley State Trail, and then some icons of the types of facilities you might find here. And then these 3 logos are placeholders for the city of Shakopee. the DNR, who operates the Minnesota Valley State Trail, and of course, our partnership would be represented here as well. So those are the draft elements that we've been working on as it relates to kind of finalizing this portion of the funding we have for the Big Woods Regional Trail and our signage project. And if we move forward with all of this, we've run the numbers, and we think we are going to be able to afford all of this, as well as a bench near the smaller kiosk that I referenced here. Currently, the bridge is well used and well loved. I feel like anytime I've been there, there have been people walking on it, and a lot of people kind of meandering slowly, potentially from that senior home that's nearby, and there's no place to sit right now. So we thought a bench near the kiosk might be appropriate. So with that, I think that is all I wanted to share about that. Happy to take any questions or comments if there are any.
Thank you, Nathan. If you could go back to the screenshot where you had the multiple pictures of the kiosks themselves. Perfect. I just want to, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen like any of you could see it. The one thing I wanted to point out is if you notice at the bottom of each of the pictures or each of the screens for our new members, you'll see you can sort of make out the word Scott and then Three Rivers next to it. So we attempt to, in all of our signage and whatnot, we attempt to co-brand with both the Scott County logo and the Three Rivers Park District logo on all of our signage, where the signage is large enough to be able to incorporate a logo. So that's part of our standard branding, is to include both logos on as much of the materials as we can. That's all I wanted to point out. So if there are any questions from any of the other commissioners?
I did see your comment, Commissioner Stieg, that you would like the benches to have armrests, and I may be able to find this quite quickly. We were, it was requested, we'll also be communicating with the city of Shakopee about specifically the backside, this sign, and confirm that they're comfortable with it. But when I had referenced that we were looking at doing that, they had asked that we take a look at their standards for benches, and this is probably the one that would make the most sense. Again, this is very much in the draft stage of things, but their standard does include armrests.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that bright red is really kind of nice, isn't it? Everyone would see the entrance of the bridge.
Other questions for Nathan?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nathan. All right, moving on to item C, Spring Lake Lakefront Development Project Initiation.
That would be me, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This is so exciting that we're talking about this. So I don't know if you noticed in your packets, I gave a lot of background because we have our two new commissioners. And you know, I think you all know by now, I love my background. So Spring Lake, the county had Spring Lake since the Commissioner Ulrich was at the early 1970s. And it sat there, loved by the neighbors, but almost no one else because there were no improvements. And it wasn't until 2012 that we invested and put some wonderful, beautiful paved trails. And prior to that, we spent quite a bit of time with a community, a resident group, and some consultants, and our Parks Commission at the time, and County Board to prepare the master plan for the park. And that master plan was developed in a way or outlined in a way that it really did a nice job of allowing us to phase construction of the park. So after many, many years, as I mentioned, we started our first phase in 2012. Can you see the master plan illustration?
Yes.
Okay. That you may recall that first phase included the off-leash pet area and some parking, and then most of the paved trail loops on the north end of the park. We were not able to make this connection. And then fast forward to about 2018, 2018, we were able to work with the Shakopee and Waikaton Sioux community on a very creative project to collaborate to finish this trail gap. And I mentioned in the memo that when we prepared the master plan, we took really seriously this idea of collaboration and sharing infrastructure where we could. And the other jurisdictions that were on the team included the FMSC and City of Shakopee and City of Pear Lake. And we also really wanted the park to feel like it was really integrated with the neighborhood. So we didn't want it to feel like a park that you had to get in your car and drive to the entrance and park. So if you live within a reasonable distance, you could easily navigate to it. So we collaborated with those people as well as the developers. And in 2018, the SMSC was working on a water quality project for Arctic Lake. Our wetlands here in the park drain this way into Arctic Lake here. And we discovered an old berm here that if we improved, could actually house the trail and then make it possible for us to do some water resources practices to address water quality issues at Arctic Lake. So that was completed. And so here I'm switching to the visitor youth route for the park. So now if you're at the park, you can use this full loop because of that project. Oh, cool. And then fast forward to, well, really around that same time, the county board approved, did someone have a question? Okay.
Well, as long as you're pausing there for a minute, I have a comment. I just want to highlight the importance of discussion, debate, questioning, because when the money that was used for the dog park and the trail at Spring Lake, that money was originally going to be used for more acquisitions of land, I think at Doyle Kennefic or somewhere for land acquisition. And we just said, wait a minute, we've owned Spring Lake since the 70s. Nothing's there, nothing, no access to the public, no usage. Let's not buy some more land. Let's do something at Spring Lake. And then so Mark Themick and Patty and the team got to work, and we have a great thing happening at Spring Lake. But that came as a result of questioning, debate, discussion, so forth. That's my commentary.
Yeah. So, and thank goodness, because it was time, right?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing, in the range of 80,000 visits per year, maybe up to 90 now. So around that same time in 2018, we were looking at what will be that next phase. And we did some planning related to our regional funding. And the county approved, so in 2018, they approved, the county board did, that in around 2023, we would do a first phase of construction at the Lakefront parcel here, utilizing Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and some county levy contribution. And we were aiming to do that, to design, I think in 21, 22, and or 21 and construct in 22. And we're off by about a year. So we just actually kicked off the design process here in the last month. We have a design consultant on board. And I want to just zero in on the Lakefront. Can you see the close-up of the Lakefront illustration? Okay, so this is from that master plan. And the project here that's been approved for a number of years that we're carrying forward and closer to fruition, that we will not be able to do everything we see here. It'd be great if we could, but that's not the plan. The plan was to do a first phase where we put in some support infrastructure that can accommodate future phases, but also to really target sort of some basic services that we know are really in demand, that are popular, and that have sort of a low entry point. So things that weren't related to having a fee. So the scope around this that we've been sort of aiming towards for the last several years includes doing this entrance drive here and parking lot. And so this is not the final design. This is obviously our master plan concept that the design will start from. And then we also hope to introduce a lake trail loop and to make it feel like it easily connects to the rest of the park, because one of the issues is we want to make sure that those two pieces that are bisected by County Road 12 feel like they're together. Really a main feature that we're aiming for is this large observation deck, and associated with it will be some docking that allows for a hand carry canoe kayak ramp that can be accessible as well. We're really aiming also to include the fishing pier in at least one of these smaller 3 fishing observation platforms, or actually I guess there's 4 depicted here in the master plan. And we also need to relocate the snowmobile trail. So right now we have the state granted snowmobile trail that runs through the park. And I should mention at this point that our regional park system doesn't really cater to have snowmobile trails, but we very much recognize it, snowmobiling as a very active part of, or popular activity in the county. And we do accommodate for those trails if there's an important connection through one of our regional parks. And we know that the connection through this park is quite important, and it was a very robust part of the conversation with the master plan. And during that time, the adjacent landowners were all involved, and the idea that we came up with was moving the trail to the side of the property so that it wouldn't cut through the center of the park. So we will be relocating it. Right now it crosses here, and we'll be doing something similar to this. And in terms of other amenities, this plan indicates a 4-season building that is not part of our first phase, play area, which is not part of the first phase. One thing we're considering that deviates a little bit from the plan is adding a small restroom building that would be separate from this main pavilion. So right now, the only restroom facility that would be here would be a part of the 4-season pavilion. So in reviewing real early reviews of the site, we're thinking that if it makes sense, we could put a small restroom building. It could be like our the vault latrine that we have near the off-leash-dog area in this vicinity. And we do think that those can be winterized to accommodate ice fishing and wintertime use of this site. An early glance by a landscape architect thought that there probably would be some room in here. And there's one other really important amenity that I haven't mentioned, and that is passive picnicking and grilling areas. We know that that's super, super popular. We know that Cleary Lake Regional Park is kind of bursting at the seams related to that use. And we actually had people say they now use the trails at Spring Lake because Cleary Lake trails are too busy. And we do expect that we'll get some people doing the grilling and picnicking once this is open. The master plan calls for a grade separated pedestrian bridge over County Road 12. That is not part of this plan. Trying to think of what else. In terms of amenities, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I'll finish off talking about the 2 neighborhood concerns I mentioned, or actually, yeah, let me talk about that and then I'll talk about our public outreach. So I just mentioned the relocation of the snowmobile trail. And with that, whenever we're introducing construction, especially towards the edge of our properties, there are complexities related to what's going on that other side. And in this instance, we have neighbors on both sides and we want to be good neighbors. So we have a dialogue going with the residents who live to the east of the snowmobile trail. And we have heard that they do have some concerns about where they see it, where they hear it, that sort of thing. So we will be, the project team is aware of this, and we are looking at options as well as mitigation we can do, like planting evergreens and that sort of thing. And I do have an open dialogue going with those residents and we'll keep them informed. And then I also wanted to mention that our shared entrance drive here, it was envisioned that we likely would share this someday with a property owner immediately to the west. So we finished the master plan before that property developed, and then that property developed before we did. They beat us. The Spring Lake Estates neighborhood owns the property immediately to the west. And they use that for, they have a dockings slips for their residents. And when their driveway was permitted, they were asked to do it real close to the property line so that when the park developed, we'd be able to potentially share. And that still seems to be sort of the spirit of sharing infrastructure, as well as really being mindful of sightlines and transportation issues. We are approaching that neighborhood board to talk about this project rebuilding their entrance and then having it shared to a certain point, and that would then tee off into their property so that they could have their private entrance still and then tee off into the park as well. And Tony Winnicky, the county engineer, and I are meeting with that neighborhood board next week to go over the great news of the improvements, and then also to start talking through that concept. You saw in the memo that we have our project team put together and our community team, and we are out doing some presentations and getting feedback. And then in terms of getting regular feedback, I would really like to do that here with the Parks Advisory Commission. And that's one thing I wanted to ask related to our outreach plan. There are a couple of things that I'm really interested in having feedback on. And I think that is the best, most efficient way to get that feedback with a group that's really knowledgeable would be to ask the Park Commission to give feedback, and then the bigger issues moving on to the county board. I'm going to hold off the one piece of feedback that I forgot to put in the memo. I'll bring that up later on, but I wanted to pause here and see and give the commission opportunity to discuss what I just mentioned, and, ask questions, to give me feedback, all that kind of stuff. So I'll just pause for a minute there. I know I went through that pretty quick.
Any questions or input for Patty from any of the commissioners? While they're all pondering that, Patty, I have a couple questions. One is, could you just remind us as to when the master plan was actually done? You probably told us in the documents, but
Yes, it was finalized in 2007.
Okay, so we are working off a document that was created in 2007, but I think you also said that we have various outreach and or other avenues for collecting people's current thoughts are sort of ongoing as the design team is working on the latest design, correct?
Absolutely.
And is the plan, once that new design is completed, will we be holding some sort of open community-esque event to review and detail and get additional feedback?
Absolutely, yeah, we have two, we just don't have the dates yet.
Okay, all right. One other question, when we talked about, again, I'm pointing at a screen that no one can see me pointing. When we talked about the center core structure there, I recall at one meeting we talked about maybe building more of a shelter as a first phase that later could be enclosed into what we wanted. Is that still on the table, or is that concept totally gone and it just didn't work?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That is one of the items I wanted to mention. Cursory review of this indicates that having that real large open air shelter on site, and then also being able to do the pavilion at some point, there's not enough room. There certainly probably isn't enough funding. When we did our initial cost estimates, all indications say that we wouldn't be able to fit it into the plan anyway. But what we are doing to be proactive is the design and engineering will take the building location through schematic design so that we make sure that we're preserving a site that could house the Four Seasons Pavilion or an open air shelter and function properly.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the commissioners or any feedback or input for Patty?
I have one, Commissioner Gerlach.
Sure.
Patty, could you elaborate just a little bit more on where the picnicking areas would be on this plan?
Yeah.
That's priority, and I'm curious where those would be located.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Gerlach. Now this, of course, is not the final plan. This is our master plan, but we are looking at this area in here, and then a little bit around the what might be a future play area, and then there could be some here too as well.
And those are scheduled to be just outdoor picnic table areas at this time?
With grills.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. So think of some of the areas at Cleary. There's several different areas, and then a portion of those will be ADA accessible. And you know, Kathy, I was also looking at this plan, and I think that there's a potential that we could have some of the family picnicking north of the proposed spot for the building too. We're trying to look at what makes sense in terms of this site. To offer that, and then also to alleviate some of the use at Cleary. But a lot of that we'll learn more about in the next few months as our landscape architect and engineers really kind of dig into the site and look at the plan.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? I have one more than Patty. The topic of the snowmobile trail and the redirecting of that trail, is there any need for, or have we reached out to any of the snowmobile groups in terms of expense and or funding for any of that, or is that all coming just as part of this project?
We have, yeah, we work real closely with they're called the Snow Trails Club. Terry Hutchinson and Tom Wills are contacts, and they are aware of the project. And they're very pleased that we're accommodating the trail, which I think they expected us to, but they're really relieved to hear that that's something that we're acknowledging and looking for a spot. And they are aware that funding would be great. I don't know that that's a possibility, but I know that they're looking into it.
Okay. And does that group also groom the trails, or does
they do?
Okay.
No, we don't. It's kind of an interesting thing. They have I want to say 250 miles of snowmobile trails just in Scott County. And they, and I think by and large, that's on private property. And they work to get these recreational permits from the landowners. And they are entirely volunteer driven. In the county, so for them to be able to they get some funding from the state, from the DNR, just for things like purchasing and insuring their grooming equipment and having liability insurance, but they have to have a sponsor. So there's a system set up across the state, and Scott County sponsors these clubs, and we just sort of pass through grants. And then they just happen to have, as a part of their network, a trail here at Spring Lake.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the commission have any questions or feedback for Patty? Hearing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a couple of questions just to make sure I'm feeling like I'm getting direction and some feedback? In the memo, I mentioned that our budget might be a little bit tight. I'm hoping not, but with that in mind, when I listed out the amenities, I listed them kind of in order of sort of the spirit of how the scope has developed over the years in terms of us targeting the project and why we target it. And I would really love if anyone has any sort of different thoughts to the way that I've numbered those, to please share your thoughts. And maybe we can have some discussion on that, because we will find ourselves down the road. We don't need to decide tonight. There is time. We'll come back and talk about this more. But I did want us to just start giving that some thought. So that's my first question. I have a couple other ones, and I can pause here if you want to address that, or I can ask my other questions too.
Can you remind us? I'm looking at it. Is it the 3 mile paved trail, 10 acre? No, that's the 2012.
Oh, and I don't have page number. Shoot. So that's this third page of my. So there's a list of 10 items.
That's the list you're talking about. Ah, top of the page. Okay, there we go. So it's the entrance, driveway, and parking, family picnic, all the way down to 2 to 3 fishing platforms. Those are the 10 items. And can you remind us, you listed them in your perceived order of number 1 is definite and number 10 is if we had to cut, we'd start cutting from the bottom up?
Yeah, and we may not need to, but and we don't need to decide today, but I just wanted us to start thinking, because there will be a time that we maybe have to cut from this, or maybe we get to add to it. Wouldn't that be great?
Never done that, but sure. All right. Anyone have any feedback for Patty in regards to the list of 10? Or if not, if you want to just ponder until it comes back around to us. I'm sensing the group wants to ponder, Patty.
I'm all for pondering. So this other item also is, I don't need feedback tonight, but I really would like us to kind of give it some thought. In the master plan, we set sort of a look and feel for the future building and the area around it. And let me pull up, oh, I hope I need to go back to the packet. So actually, no, I'm gonna go back here first. So we envision as a part of the master plan that out in front of this someday building, there will be an arbor, kind of a formal looking arbor that will overlook this open water pond that would potentially have a fountain. And the idea at the time was that the pond would also serve as for stormwater management. And what I've learned is that the county highway group put a small stormwater pond in over in this corner when County Road 12 was constructed in this area. And we also know that we have some delineated wetland in this area based on some pre-work we did for this. We got a survey and wetland delineation. And it's pretty tricky, number one, to make a stormwater pond pretty. It can really take a lot of work to get that sort of feeling as this pretty open water amenity. So that's number one issue. The second issue is when you start taking a delineated wetland and say that you want to put stormwater in it, there are permits and costs that come along with that are a pretty steep hill to climb. And I don't have details on that, but I'm just sort of sharing generally. And there's also this notion of, at this point, you know, how formal do we want to start making this area look? How manicured? Because the more manicured and formal it looks, the more maintenance you put in. And some of that we don't need to decide today or even as a part of this plan. But I did want us to just give some thought over the next 6 months about this. And my one specific question is, when we think about maybe someday having a building here that could house family reunions, small weddings, things like that in an arbor, if we are interested in having some sort of nice formal amenity that it overlooks on, we could potentially do like an upland grassland or an upland prairie that's very manicured looking, it would be probably much more realistic in terms of our ability to maintain it and maintain it in an attractive manner. I don't think that what we have depicted here is realistic. So I wanted to introduce this concept, have the commission just think about this. Certainly, if you have questions right now, ask those questions, and we'll come back to this as our design process progresses over the coming months. So those are the thoughts I wanted to share, and I'd be happy to try to answer questions, address concerns, anything.
Any questions for Patty? Well, I have a couple then, Patty. So, well, actually one's just a statement. So when we talk about a stormwater pond and a wetland area, the concept of commingling of that water doesn't sound good, regardless of what all the permits and costs, and it just on the face just doesn't sound good. Secondly, when you talked about the upland prairie, are we talking about then re-engineering the wetland area into or how, if you could maybe explain a little bit about what that means, or if they're two totally different spaces?
Yeah, what you said. I don't think that we want to change the delineated wetland. Perhaps the project could enhance some of it if there are dollars to do that. So this sort of is a design conundrum, and I think I would leave it to the landscape architects to potentially come up with a couple concepts that we would consider. And it could simply be that the wetland edge, we add a formal buffer, a grassland buffer around it that looks really attractive, and it actually enhances the wetland. It could be that they orient the building differently, or they suggest that we can do that in the future, and it could look over something, separate from the wetland that might be, maybe we build up a little hill and have a nice prairie. So I think it's a design challenge, but I don't know what they're going to bring back to us. The biggest thing is I think over the years I've gotten kind of attached to this this layout and this image, and as we really dug into it, I started to realize that it's maybe not realistic, and I wanted to convey that to the commission.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or feedback for Patty? Hearing none. Thank you, Patty, for the information. And unless there's anything else, we will move on to item 9. Are we ready to move on, Patty?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Item 9A, project other updates, nature connection, item 1.
Staff does not have any nature connections to report this month, but we'd be happy to hear if any of the commissioners want to share a nature connection.
Anyone have anything?
I went skiing at Cleary Lake and I saw a possum on the trail. He just looked at me and smiled, and I just went right around him. So that's my nature connection for the month.
Thanks, Commissioner Eric. Anybody else?
I just watched 3 deer go through our front yard on the Nest Cam.
All right.
I'm envious of people that are away from the city.
I am right up until the point that they have to shovel snow and or mow the yard. And then I'm like, you know what? My place is just fine. All right. Anybody else? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to item 2, the outreach Let's Go Fishing.
That would be me. I wanted to let you know that we're going to have Let's Go Fishing come and present. I think they're going to come in April. We've not hosted them at one of our meetings here for a couple of years. So I'm anxious to hear about how Let's Go Fishing is doing and get a refresher on what our partnership looks like, what they're expecting this year. And we always like the opportunity for them to promote themselves. So just wanted to let you know that we're lining that up. And I believe that Tom Buck will be coming with their rep, Tom Gorky. And Commissioner Ulrich, you may be interested to know that I've given them a heads up that after the Park Commission, we really would like them to visit with the county board as well. It's been quite a while. So they, I think, have a lot of new board members. And we all know what it's like to keep a volunteer. Well, I'm sure many of us know what it's like to keep a volunteer board going. I didn't want to overwhelm them with the 2 invites. I said, let's just get them to the Park Commission, give them a great warm welcome, and then say, hey, can you come back and talk to the county board?
Thank you, Patty. Anyone have any questions for Patty about Let's Go Fishing? Well, not to break my track record. Patty, I have a question. I'm just curious that I recall that COVID obviously impacted Let's Go Fishing, but did they run last year or did COVID totally shut them down?
I think they did, but you know, Pat, Steve, you're a volunteer once in a while. Can you confirm that? I've kind of forgotten.
You know, I cannot confirm it. I did not volunteer last year, and I frankly didn't get a lot of information, so I'm not sure. I assume they were operational.
Okay, all right.
Chair, I can just tell from visual observation on Cedar Lake that they did operate last summer. Probably not as much, certainly did not see them out as much. And I think that's a lot from what I had heard due to a lot of the organizations that use them had, pretty strict restrictions as well, but they did have the boat in the water and they were out.
Okay. All right. Unless there's something else, we will move on to item 3, the other item that we added to the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the other item. I just wanted to share an update for those commissioners that were around last year and may remember we did a winter seeding event at the future Dole Kennefic Regional Park, where we invited volunteers to come and throw seed on the snow to help restore one of our prairies out there. And we are doing that again this year, we are partnering with Great River Greening on this volunteer project. So I just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware. The event will be Saturday, February 26th, so coming up in a few weeks, from 9 a.m. to 10:30, and it'll both be a seating event and also an information session where volunteers can learn not only about the future of the regional park, but also best practices and some of the ecological benefits of doing winter seeding for prairies.
And if any of the commissioners are interested in volunteering, they would go about that how?
Yes, so there is a flyer that will be going out. Registration will be handled through Great River Greening, and it is not currently open, but will be open tomorrow. I've been coordinating with their staff to try to get things up and running. But I'm also happy to share out the flyer that was co-produced between our agencies to the Parks Commission for those that are interested in signing up, because Great River Greening has a different, they have a registration page to sign up on.
Okay, and do you know, is it going to be limited to X number of people, or do they want to take anybody and everybody?
That's a great question, Chair. Yes, capacity will be limited. I don't have the exact number on what it'll be limited to, but I know that they're still working on some large group restrictions as well within their group. So it won't be a really large event, but so capacity will be slightly limited, but I can't say to what at this moment.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from any of the other commissioners? All right, thank you, Alyssa. Moving on to item B. Advisory Commissioner reports. Anybody have anything?
I have something to report.
Sure.
We, at Cedar, obviously there's been a consideration and a discussion about the camping area and relocating the camping area and the need for a shower facility in a building, for that has to be in close proximity to camping. We've also talked about camper cabins and in that same area. And the county board has been working with ARPA funds and revenue recapture funds as a result of COVID and so forth. And the board gave approval to fund the camping facility and camper cabins at Cedar Lake.
Oh.
So the first little step is a $100,000 design money, but the full approval has been given. So on that. So that's exciting.
Yeah,
very exciting.
I didn't think that would happen anytime in the next 5 years, but it's going to happen.
Very cool. Anyone else have anything?
Yep, I've got one item. Hey, Patty, do you know if they're going to have their mountain bike race, the fat bike race like they've done in the last couple of years?
I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Spieler, I had that same question. And I asked, so with turnover in staff, it was kind of an unsure. And I asked Wendy Wyrick is the director of that group. And she's going to be talking to Brent and Cleary staff to see if that's something we can do. Okay. I mean, it's already February and I haven't heard anything, so it may not be on their plans, but I'm definitely asking.
Yeah, usually I see an email or something on like the Facebook page, for example. It's usually there and I haven't seen it yet. And I know in the past, they've always had like a free day. You can go cross country skiing for free or rentals or free.
We are having that.
You are? Okay.
Yep.
When is that?
Oh gosh, I just looked at it and you know what? I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Okay, no worries, but I haven't seen anything about it on their Facebook page. So
it's usually like February 23rd. So if it's not publicized yet, it should be coming out shortly.
Okay. It'd be great if they could advertise it, right? Have like a little signage in front of Cleary Lake Park, right? Because that big sign there's not much on it right now, so it'd be a nice thing to add to it. So
the entrance monument.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep. Exactly. So on the other couple updates, I've been over to Cleary probably 3-4 times a week. There's been quite a few cross-country skiers, weather permitting. Justin and team has done a very good job grooming it. Right now, we need some more snow. He's kicking up a little dirt here and there, but still not bad. I've seen a couple of fat bikers out there, but not too many. But I've seen a lot of walkers out there, once in a while, snowshoers, etc. So it's good. The weather's been really terrible for like last, 2 months. It's been a roller coaster of temperatures, right? So it really doesn't help. So that's my update from Cleary. I went to Carver last Sunday. I was really impressed with their grooming over there, as well as their programming, because at a youth ski league, and the whole parking lot was packed. It was unbelievable how many people were there between the fat biking on the single track, along with the cross country skiing. So it was a fantastic day to be out there. So. And I did see their archery range. And now I know what Nate was talking about with like a really nice archery range. I mean, I was thinking it would be more something like Shakopee where you're just shooting at the target, but this actually went through the woods. They've got deer stands you can shoot from, right? So there's a variety of different obstacles you have to shoot, around, which is nice. So that's my update.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Spieler. Anybody else have anything? Anyone else? Last and final time. All right, that concludes the Advisory Commissioner reports. Moving on to item 10, upcoming meeting, tentative topics.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a few items that we've mentioned this evening that could be on the March meeting. So in addition to the operating budget discussion, which actually would probably start in April, in the Parks Improvement Program, There's a potential we would have Let's Go Fishing, as I mentioned, although they're probably more likely going to be in April. And I do think to Mr. Ulrich's comment that we maybe will have an ARPA update in March. It could be April, but we will see. Andy Hingerville is project managing those, the parks projects. I'll check in with him. He's very much coordinating with myself and the team. So if we feel like we have enough meaningful information to bring together, I will share that. One thing I will say is that along with the kicking off the design for Cedar Lake Farm and the other projects, there's pretty extensive documentation of reaching out to the community. Andy's already visiting with townships and such just to let them know what's going on, so people out in the public really start to hear about it. So I just wanted to let you know that that process is starting. So perhaps in March would be a good time for Andy to come in and introduce where he's at with the projects.
Is that, Patty, is that a larger project, or is that this specific camper cabin, restroom, shower thing, or is it a...
Sure. So ARPA projects, there's, gosh, how many? 25 proposed, maybe, Mr. Ulrich? There's about $30 million. And there's a portion of that 30 million that the board and leadership has said that potentially parks and libraries can use to do some improvements. And there's several parks projects that we're looking at. One is the Cedar Lake Farm project that Commissioner Ulrich mentioned. We're also looking at the trails at Doe Kennefic, campground compliance at Cleary Lake Regional Park. And then depending on the other projects that are approved, there could be additional funds for other projects for which, you know, maybe parks would be a receiver of those. So that's in the future, that's to be decided. So Andy would come and talk about the ARPA projects that are specific to, including the Cedar Lake Farm one.
Okay, all right. Questions, anything else in terms of content from the commissioners in regards to the March meeting? Hearing nothing, is there anything else we need to cover, Patty?
I don't have anything, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. With that, well then I would like to formally welcome Commissioner Koop and Commissioner Schmid to the commission. I apologize I wasn't here last month to formally welcome you, but again, thank you for your participation. And most importantly, and most excited from a personal perspective as it relates to the two new commissioners, after 7.5 years, I'm no longer the new guy. So welcome to the team, welcome to the body. Unless there's anything else, it would be appropriate at this time if there was a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Gerlach, is there a second?
Second, Spieler.
Second, Commissioner Spieler. Discussion, sensing none. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We are done and out. Thanks, everybody.
See you next month.
Take care.